Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Uh, we are going to start the second session. Now, before going into the second session, I just go through the things which we have already discussed. In the last session, we discussed about the one period rate of return, then expected rate of return, variance and the standard deviation of returns. And we were not in a position to discuss about the covariance of returns. After going through the things which we have already discussed, I will start with the covariance of returns today. Now, when you say returns, our main idea is to invest in a certain asset or set of assets in order to get a higher return with the lower or lowest risk. As an investor, the objective is that. So what they do is they just try to select assets to have a higher return with a limited or minimum amount of risk. So in order to just do a evaluation or quantification of the returns, we need to understand how we are going to analyze the return of an asset. For that, I explained about the one period rate of return. That is the most simple way of calculating the return. And there what you have to do is you need to go through the available data. Now, when you say available data, that is more or less the historical data. Now, when you say historical, already the things have happened. Now, if you really look at a stock price, that is historical. That is historical, basically historical. So then by going through the prices of two different points of time, you are in a position to calculate the return of that stock for that period. Now, when you try to do that, you will be able to understand the return of that stock. Now, I am referring to a stock at the beginning because that stock might have a price change, and at the same time, there can be a dividend cash flow. In order to get the return calculated, you need to get the price change and you need to have a price. You need to get the price change and the dividend cash flow in order to get the return calculated. So that is a very simple way of calculating the return of a stock. Even for another instrument, you can use this technique by looking at the price change and at the same time, during the period of time, what is the cash flow received. So these are the two things which you need to understand when you calculate the one period rate of return by going through historical data, historical figures. So that is the simplest way of calculating the rate of return. But in investments, we do not rely on the historical figures because it's not very analytical to do that, because in the future we might have to just experience a different set of situations. Therefore, in very modern investment analysis, what we do is we try to calculate the expected return rather than calculating the one period rate of return on a historical basis. That's why we just explained about expected rate of return. Now, when we say expected rate of return, what you need to do is you need to get some expected return as an estimate. And that return is really pertaining to a certain state of the economy. So that state of the economy can have a probability. So in order to just put a small or very simple explanation, what we need to understand is there can be alternative economic status which we may have to face. Now, such economic situations to happen, that economic situation, there can be a possibility. For example, nowadays we know that we are in an economic downturn because of this issue. So therefore, in the future, the high probability is there to have a downturn or recession type of economy. So then we can say, in analytical form, there's a possibility of 50% to have a recession type of economy. Then one can say we might have a recovery state, but that possibility would be less. So you can say 25%. Then altogether now we have taken 75% of the times, but another remaining 25% is there. So that 25% may be stagnation. So likewise, if you go into 3 states of economy, so we decide that there's a 50% chance of recession, there's a 25% chance of recovery, there's a 25% chance of stagnation. So these are the analytical viewpoint of an economy. And we can attribute a certain return for each of these economic states. So that, as I told you, the 50% is the recession. So therefore, you expect a very low return or a minus return. So you can attribute that. Then we have another alternative, which can be the recovery. But even though it is recovery, your rate of return would be not that high. It may not be negative, but it's a lower return. Or if you have a stagnation also, you may have a very low return. So these are the types of assumptions we make on a certain return. With those assumptions, we are in a position to calculate the expected rate of return. Now, when you calculate the expected rate of return, what you do is you just get the return and what is the relevant probability of that return. So the probability and the return has to be multiplied and added up. Then you get the expected rate of return. Now, when you say expected rate of return, that is an estimated one. So that is an estimation. So therefore, as per the investor's assumptions, it relies on investors' assumptions. So therefore, the expected return can be different as the investor decides. Right. Now I will show you a certain presentation where we use the, I think that you have already gone through those presentations. In the presentation, I have just explained the calculation of expected return. That last time also we discussed about it. Now we will see how we did the calculation of right. I think I want to just ask you certain thing where you have to just mute your phones in order to get a very clear voice. So therefore you just mute your phones, but if you want to ask a question, you can just unmute and ask the question. So that is what you need to do. Right. Now, when we try to get an idea about this expected rate of return, now that is a analytical return. And it's not the historical one, it's the estimated future return. Now then our idea is to see how this return can be varied, or there can be several variations in this return for different points. Now when you say expected return, there's another symbol or code given for that. We sometimes we put it as expected return ER. Sometimes it is denoted as mu. If you have gone through the lesson, you should have found that expected rate of return is given as ER equals to P1 R1 plus P2 R2 plus P3 R3. Then the last point is Pn Rn. So that is the way of calculating expected rate of return. Then we discuss about the variance of returns. Now, what is this variance of returns? The variance of returns means, though we estimate this return for the future, there can be several changes. Now, those changes we can measure. Now, that measurement is called the variance of returns. Now, say, if you can have, if you can calculate the expected return, and if you are sure that there's no variation in that return, that will be exactly the return which you are going to get, then there's no variation as such. Then we say the variance of returns is 0. But in practical terms, it may not happen. Whatever the expected return we calculate or we estimate, there can be changes. Now, those changes can be calculated on the basis of a variance. Now, I will show you how we can calculate that. Or in other words, these expected returns or expected return can have a difference with the actual return. So that difference is the variance. That difference is the variance. So then what we need to do is, we need to get the expected return calculated first. Then from each return, we have to deduct the expected return. I will just put it into the board and just show you. I think last time also I just gave the discussion on this. But today, we are going to have a new topic, that is covariance of returns. Covariance of returns. Now, today's lesson, we are going to start with that covariance of returns. Now, it is a statistical measure how the returns of two assets move together. That is the physical explanation of covariance or covariance of returns. How the two assets' returns are moving together. For example, say that I can get examples of two assets A and B. Now there's a return for A and there's a return for B. When A's return is going to go up, what would happen to the B's return? So that is the idea given by this covariance. And there's a method of calculation also, the covariance. Now, you can just look at the example in the lesson. Now there, just look at your note. There you have an example on covariance of returns. Now there also in that example, you can see the states of nature, 1, 2, 3 and 4. There are 4 states of nature given in this example, and those states of nature will occur of a certain probability. So that probability of occurrence given, now I think please you can just get that note or you have that note with you, or I can just point into that, or I will just explain it on the board. Right. I think better way is to explain it on the board. So therefore I will explain it on the board. Before that, I will just give some summary about the particular problem. Now the probability of occurrences are given here as 0.2, 0.4, 0.3 and 0.1. Then if you look at the probability of occurrence, you can add up and see that the total should come to 1. Then annual returns, there are 2 assets taken here, L and M. The returns are given. So now I will show you, I will demonstrate you the way you can do the covariance calculation. The covariance calculation. It is in the lesson, but I think it is better if you get an idea through the demonstration. Therefore, I will demonstrate it on the board. Is that okay? Right. I suppose that you all have gone through this earlier. Now what I will do is I will explain these things on the board. I will work the sum on the board. Now this is about 2 assets, L and M. And in that particular example, 4 states of nature being taken into consideration. And those states of natures have relevant probability of occurrence. And all annual returns of assets L and M are given. Right, I will just explain it on the board. You have states of nature, then probability of occurrence, then annual returns. Now you keep in your mind that there are 4 states of nature. 4 states of nature, then probabilities of occurrence. For the first state of nature, it is 0.2. For the second state of nature, it is 0.4. For the third state of nature, it is 0.3. For the fourth state of nature, it is 0.1. And when you add it up, you get 1. Then annual returns, LM. Now, These annual returns are all estimated annual returns. Now this is given in your lesson. LM. Now I will put the returns of L. When the state of nature 1 happens, or with the probability of 0.2, the annual return would be -5%. Then it is 10%. With the third state of nature, it is -4%. When the fourth state of nature, it is 7%. If you have, now if you go to M also, there are 4 types of returns which can arise with the probabilities of occurrence. 6%, -2%, 8%, -9%. Now, these are the data given. These are the data given. And now we will see how we can calculate the covariance of returns of L and M. Covariance of returns of L and M. Because these two assets are L and M. Now, as I told you earlier, what do you mean by covariance? Covariance is the statistical evaluation of, or statistical quantification of how the things or how the returns of L and M vary together. So that is the idea of covariance. That is the idea of covariance. So I will show you how we can calculate the covariance of returns of L and M. Covariance of returns of L and M. So it is given, or it is symbolized as, I will show the symbol, covariance of returns. Now this is symbolized in COV LM. COV LM. Or sometimes you put it this way also, L, M. Covariance LM. This is one way of putting it, or either this is one way, or we can put it this way, covariance LM. These are the two ways of putting or giving as a symbol the covariance. Either you can write COV and within brackets you can say L, M. That is one way. The other way is you can write COV and you can put in small letters, but in capital form or whatever, L, M. So you can see it on the board. So that is the symbol given for covariance. Now we will see how we are going to calculate the covariance of returns of L and M. Before going into that, we should calculate the expected rate of return of L at the beginning. Then we need to calculate expected rate of return of M. So that is the first step towards calculating the covariance LM. So then our first step is to calculate the covariance, calculate the expected rate of return of L. Now, now you can just see when you calculate this ERL. Now ERL is calculated this way. Now, I just put it on the board, but I think you can go through it in your lesson. In your lesson, it is given. Now, I think this calculation of expected rate of return of L, I will just show it on the board. We are in the process of calculating the covariance of returns between L and M. So in order to do that, first we need to calculate the expected rate of return of L. And it is symbolized in this form. ERL. ERL. It is equal to, right. How are we going to put it? Now you can see, we are talking about L. Probability of occurrence is 0.2, 0.2 into minus 5. 0.2 into minus 5. Now, just to be simple, what we do is, we will try to put only the number rather than put in the percentage mark. Everyone, we are just calculating things without the percentage mark, and at last we will put the percentage mark. So therefore, we will start with 0.2, that is the probability of occurrence, 0.2 into minus 5%. You can say minus 5 plus 0.4 into 10. 0.4 into 10 plus 0.3 into, you can say plus 0.3 into minus 4 plus 0.1 into 7. Now, when you do the calculations, you will get the answer 2.5%. This is the answer for ERL. ERL. Right. In the same manner, you can calculate the expected rate of return for M also. That is ERM. ERM, we can calculate it and we can just get it as 1.9%. Now, in our covariance calculation, project, now we have already calculated the expected rate of return of L, that is 2.5, and expected rate of return of M, that is 1.9%. So I think this is a very simple exercise. You all can do that on your own, but this is a demonstration. So in the demonstration, what I try to do is, I will just put it in the board and give a certain way of doing it. Then you can clearly understand that. Now, in order to do the covariance calculations, now what do you mean by covariance is, for each of these returns, you have to deduct the expected rate of return from each of these returns and multiply it with the respective probability. Now, in order to do that, we should go to a certain worksheet. Now, that worksheet, I will show you. Now, in that worksheet, you have 6 columns in that worksheet. The first column will give the probabilities. Second column will give the returns of L. Third column will give the returns of M. Fourth column would be RL minus ERL. That is what we have already calculated. Fifth column would be RM minus ERM. Then the covariance LM would be the multiplication of 1 column 1 into column 4 into column 5. So that is how we calculate the covariance. Right. Now, what we can do is we can have a schedule for this. Now, we have already calculated the expected rate of return of L, that is 2.5%. Expected rate of return of M, that is 1.9%. And now we will try to have that schedule. Now, in that schedule, I will show it on the board. Now,
the whiteboard is not clear.
Pardon?
Whiteboard is not clear.
That's so. Right. Anyway, now, do you have the lesson with you?
Yes.
This lesson? Right. Anyway, I will try to get it clear. Now, can all of you just get your lesson with you, or is it in the screen? Now, if the board is not very clear, then I just told you the way you can calculate the expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. Right, I will try to just do some adjustment to the board. So after that, I will explain it. But anyway, in the meantime, I just explained you the way you calculate the expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. I think that is not a difficult one. So I think you all can do that calculation. So that as for that calculation, ERL is 2.5%, ERM is 1.9%. So the further calculations for the covariance, I will do when the board is board is corrected. Anyway, till that time, I will explain you the way it can be done. So we have to have a schedule prepared. In that schedule, as I told you earlier, there can be 6 columns. First column gives the probabilities. Second column gives the return of L. Third column gives the returns of M. Fourth column gives RL minus ERL. Fifth column gives RM minus ERM. The last column gives covariance LM. Now covariance LM is given by the multiplication of RL minus ERL, RM minus ERM, that is column 4 and 5. It has to be multiplied with column 1. So then that multiplication comes to the 6th column. So if you get the total of that, you will get the covariance of LM. So that is how this calculation is done. Now I will try to put it on the board. Anyway, is there any place of the board which is not clear, or
The entire board is not clear.
entire board is not clear? Right. Okay. Then till the board is corrected, I will just go into the presentation. Is it clear now? Is the board clear now?
The board is clear.
Yeah.
Marker is the problem, I believe. Marker is the problem. You have to use new marker. That's what.
Marker, right. Okay. Anyway, the demonstration which I did, actually, what I did was I just showed you how you calculate the expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. I think that's a simple one. So I just get that answers. That is ERL is equal to 2.5% and ERM is equal to 1.9%. Now I will just demonstrate the covariance calculation on the board. For that, we need to have a schedule of 6 columns. We need to have 6-column schedule. This is probability. Now, is it clear?
The board is not clear. I mean, we see the letters as when we look at that mirror.
Right. They are the
Opposite
shine,
side
no?
of the
They are
yeah.
shine comes.
No, no, no. Letters are. We see the opposite side of the letter.
Right.
I think the selfie cam because of the
Okay,
selfie
okay.
cam.
Right. ඒකයි වෙන්නේ. අනිත් පැත්ත කරලා වෙන්නේ. Now I think can you click your screen again? Then it can be corrected. I think. Right. Hello. ආවා. මේක නෑ මේකේ මේ අනිත් පැත්ත තමයි වෙන්නේ. මෙයා කිව්වා. කවුද? මිනිස් ගොඩ කන්ද කිව්වා. ඔව්. Right. Now can you see this? Can you see this?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now I just explained the calculation of expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. They are right. Now this is the chart I just showed on the board, and there you just see the annual returns of L and M, and states of natures are given 1, 2, 3, and 4. The probabilities of occurrences are 0.2, 0.4, 0.3, 0.1, and annual returns given L and M Now I just showed you, even not that successfully, but I just gave you the way of calculating the expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. That, of course, given in the lesson here, right? ERL is calculated as 2.5 and ERM is calculated as 1.9%. Now you see the document now, right? The way of calculating ERL I just explained, and the result came as 2.5, and expected rate of return of M is taken as 1.9. Now we have already calculated the expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. Now this is the schedule I refer to. Now you have to make a schedule of 6 columns. That 6-column schedule right, you can see that. In the first column, you give the probabilities. On the second column, you give the rate of return L, rate of return of L. In the third column, you give rate of return of M. In the fourth column, you give RL minus ERL. ERL is already calculated. RL is given here. RL minus ERL is coming in the column 4. Column 5 is RM minus ERM. So this is the real deviation we are calculating. Now you just look at all the columns. As per the state of nature, the probabilities are given as 0.2, 0.4, 0.3 and 0.1. RL is without the percentage mark, I put it in second column, minus 5%, 10%, minus 4% and 7%. RM 6%, minus 2%, 8% and minus 9%. Now in the column 4, you need to get RL minus ERL. RL is minus 5, ERL is 2.5. Minus 5 minus 2.5 comes to minus 7.5. In the second row, you get RL as 10, ERL is as 2.5, 10 minus 2.5, 7.5. Then you get minus 4 in the third row. Minus 4 minus 2.5 comes as minus 6.5. Then 7 minus 2.5 comes as 4.5. Now this is the column 4. Column 4 gives the deviation of RL, return of L. Now what do you mean by deviation? How that return differ from expected rate of return. So that is what we measure in the column 4. In the column 5, we measure the deviation of asset M, RM minus ERM. So you can just see ERM we calculated as 1.9, and there you get the fifth column, RM is 6 minus 1.9, 4.1. Then the second row, you get RM as minus 2 minus 1.9, minus 3.9. Then 8 minus 1.9, 6.1, minus 9 minus 1.9, minus 10.9. Now we got the values for column 4 and column 5. Now the column 4 and column 5 give the values of deviation of return of L, deviation of return of M. And in order to calculate the covariance, what you do is you multiply the deviations of RL and deviations of RM with the respective probability. So in the column 6, to get the covariance, you need to multiply column number 1, that is probability column, column number 1, that is probability column, column number 4, that is deviation of return of L, column number 5, that is deviation of return of M. Now all these columns to be multiplied together. So then you get this last column. Now it is given, demonstrated as column 6 is equal to the multiplication of column 1, column 4 and column 5. So after multiplying, now you get the multiplication 0.2 into minus 7.5 into 4.1, then you get a minus figure 6.15. Then the next one, there you get the probability 0.4, 0.4 into 7.5 into minus 3.9, that would come as minus 11.70. Then in the third row, you get 0.3 into minus 6.5 into 6.1, that is minus 11.895. The last one, that is 0.1 into 4.5 into minus 10.9, that is minus 4.905. When you get the total of this, that will come to minus 34.65. So this is the covariance of returns between L and M, that is minus 34.65. So this is the way we calculate the covariance. Is that clear? Is that clear? Yes. Now the way of calculating the covariance is given here. Now this column, this schedule is prepared on this. This is the example. Probabilities of occurrences are given, returns are given, respective returns are given. And what we did was, we calculated the expected rate of return of L and expected rate of return of M. Then we get the next schedule. That schedule calculates the covariance. Is it clear? Now I am asking you whether this explanation is clear.
Yes.
Right. I think this is a very straightforward calculation. There's no big hassle here. Only thing is you need to prepare the schedule correctly. If you prepare the schedule correctly, then it is very easy for you to do the calculations. Now you just see the covariance of returns of L and M is calculated as minus 34.65. Now what do you mean by this? This is the most important thing. Now the meaning here is, when you have a return, now the both of the returns will have a negative relationship. That means if one goes up, the other goes down. For example, if the return of L goes up, this particular result indicates that if returns of L goes up, returns of M may go down. So that is the indication given by this number. And when you say 34, that is a big number. It can be a higher number also. Now 34 is, now say, if you have another covariance which you say it is 160 or something, then that covariance is higher. So the indication of a covariance gives you the movement of two assets returns. So that is what we can gather from this calculation. Now we did the calculation for not historical returns, the expected type of returns. Or in other words, all these are futuristic figures. But there can be a situation where you need to calculate the covariance on the basis of historical returns. Now you can just look at the next part of it. Now in the next part, the explanation is given how we calculate the historical things. If you have historical figures, how are you going to calculate the covariance? Now there you don't have any probabilities. You just have only the numbers. Only the numbers. So then what you need to do is you have to calculate the average of it and all the returns to be compared with the averages, and you just get the returns. Now I want to get an idea whether you understood the way the covariance is calculated on the basis of futuristic figures or expected figures. Is that clear? Yes. If you have any questions, you can ask now with regard to the covariance calculations. Because you can, there are four problems given, and you can just practice yourself with those problems. So let me get your feedback. Are you okay with the explanation of this covariance calculation?
Yes.
Right. Anyway, if you have any issues, let me know. Then the other thing is, I just assume that you have read these things earlier before coming to the lesson. So then it is easy for you to understand if you do that. Now, in the covariance calculation, you make sure that always you calculate the expected returns first. Because when you calculate the covariance, you deal with two asset returns. Two assets, always two assets. And returns of these two assets will have to be calculated, and will have to, they have given, it is given. And you need to calculate the expected rate of returns of these both assets. So that's what we did in this calculation also. We calculated the expected rate of return of L first and expected rate of return of M second. So the expected rate of return of L is taken as 2.5%. Expected rate of return of M is taken as 1.9%. So those all are calculated. Then we just prepared the schedule. And in that schedule, you have the probability, return of L, return of M, then RL minus ERL, RM minus ERM, then the covariance. So this is the simple way of calculating the covariance. Right. Now, there's another point, because the covariance really, it is a measure which is not normalized. Now, in order to have this normalized, what we need to do is, this covariance has to be divided with the standard deviation of L and standard deviation of M. In order to get that, so I will show you that, and we call it correlation. Now it's also a measure of the relationship between two assets. The correlation coefficient can take on a value from -1 to +1. Now, as you just noticed, the covariance can be any figure, plus or minus. But correlation is a figure which should lie between -1 and +1. Its lowest figure would be -1, highest figure could be +1. Now, when you calculate the correlation, invariably you need to get the covariance calculated first. Then you need to divide it by standard deviation and the standard deviation of, now say, if you want to calculate covariance, there you have to, correlation, you have to get the covariance first, then it has to be divided by standard deviation of L and standard deviation of M. Now I am referring to covariance Lm, which we have already calculated. Now when we calculate that, we can go into correlation coefficient also. And next part, you just got the calculation of variance also. I think we did it last time. Last time we just went through the calculation of variance also. Now, what I feel is, if you just comfortable with, the calculation of covariance, then you need to go into the next one, that is correlation. I think that covariance has a direct connection with correlation. What we need to do is, when you, after calculating the covariance, you can divide it by the standard deviations of returns of L and M. When you do that, you will just arrive at correlation coefficient. In this lesson, I have just explained the calculation of correlation also. Now, in order to calculate the correlation coefficient, you need to get the variance and the standard deviation of L and M calculated. Now, in this example, standard deviation of returns of L is calculated in this equation. Sigma L squared is equal to 0.2 into, now -5 is the return, and -2.5, that's squared. Now you can just see the way it is being calculated. There you get the value sigma L as the square root of 48.45, that is 6.9606. Now this is the value comes to the standard deviation of returns of L, 6.96. Then you get the value standard deviation of returns of M as 5.7. And the covariance is, we have already calculated, minus 34.65, and it has to be divided by these two. Now standard deviation of L is 6.96, standard deviation of M is 5.7. Then in order to get the correlation coefficient calculated, you need to divide the covariance of LM by 6.9606 and 5.7. Then you arrive at an answer which is minus 0.8733. Now this is the correlation coefficient between returns of L and M. And this figure is within the values of -1 and +1. And when the correlation coefficient is a minus figure, that means when L's return goes up, M's return goes down. No, M's return goes up, L's return goes down. So that is what you mean by getting a minus correlation coefficient. And this relationship is known as negative relationship. Negative relationship. Now we discussed about very important type of concepts with regard to asset returns, starting with the 1 period rate of return. Then we discussed about expected rate of return. Then we discussed about the variance and the standard deviation of returns. And today we discussed about covariance. Basically, the meaning is how two assets returns are moving together. That is what you mean by covariance. Correlation is also a part of covariance, or we call it normalized covariance. In order to get the correlation coefficient calculated, what you need to do is you need to get the covariance, and it has to be divided with standard deviation of L and M. So that is the more normalized figure, the correlation coefficient. I just explained the covariance on the lesson, and I will show you the next part of it. That is what I need to explain is the correlation coefficient. In order to get the correlation coefficient calculated, we need to get the standard deviation of returns of L and M calculated. So that is given in the lesson actually, but I can just show it on the board for the time being. Now, we are referring to the first covariance of returns. Then we refer to correlation coefficient. Correlation coefficient. Now, what is the relationship between these two? Now, correlation coefficient is symbolized as rho. If it is L and M, between L and M, you put it as rho LM. rho LM is equal to covariance LM divided by sigma L into sigma M. Now, this particular relationship is a very important one. It's a very important type of relationship. Now, as it is, in our exercise, we calculated the covariance of returns between L and M. That we calculated as minus 34.65. 34.65. And at the earlier lesson, last lesson, we did the calculation of sigma L. That was 6.9606. If you go to the lesson and you just look at it, you will find that the sigma L is 6.9606. And sigma M is 5.7. If you do this calculation, you will end up with minus 0.8733. 8733. Now, this is how the correlation coefficient is calculated. Now, this correlation coefficient gives you a very good explanation about the relationship between returns of L and M. Now, when you get a minus figure, and the other thing is this correlation coefficient should lie between minus 1 and plus 1. So that's a theoretical law. There you need to see that always you should get the value for this correlation coefficient which is in between minus 1 and plus 1. If you get a value which is higher than 1 or less than minus 1, what will happen is, I think somewhere you have made a mistake if you get that type of figure. Say, for example, if you get 2 for this value, correlation coefficient, that is not acceptable. That is wrong. It should be always between minus 1 and plus 1. Now, you can say, you can give a meaning for this. What is the meaning for this? When you have this type of relationship, the correlation coefficient is minus 0.8733. We can say that return of asset L and return of asset M negatively correlated. Negatively correlated by 87%. Negatively correlated by 87%. So when you say correlated by 87%, that's a significant relationship. Significant relationship, 87%. If a relationship, now if you get a figure which is higher than 0.5, then we call it a significant relationship. 0.87, even though it is minus, then we call it a negative relationship. Now, if you get a figure positive figure, 0.90 or whatever, if it is a positive figure, we call it the two asset returns are positively related by 90%. So that is how we put it. Now, I think you get some point here. It's a very, very important type of value. It's correlation coefficient. And it really gives a certain characteristic of returns. So therefore, this value is a very, very important value. Is it clear? Now, I Rather these things are basically, you can say, involve so many calculations. But if you get it into the physical behavior, then you need to use these values in analytical explanations. Now, anyway, is that okay? Now, I just explained the relationship between covariance and the correlation coefficient. Now, you need to make sure that now you are very much comfortable with calculating the expected returns, calculating the variance of returns, standard deviation of returns, then the covariance of returns, then the correlation coefficient of two assets. Now, if you are comfortable with calculating all these things, then you are at a good stand. But you can see, I mean, any response? With some technical difficulties, I think today we had to face technical difficulties, but even though with all these technical difficulties, I will try my best to put it in a clear way, clear form. Anyway, I need to get your kind of responses in order to put it in a more clear form. Yes. What do you think? Are you in a position to just use these points? Is that correlation coefficient calculation clear? Yes.
So can you explain it another one?
Right. Another one in the sense now you, I think I have taken the example from the note. I have taken this example from the note. Another one in the sense now, in the last session, I explained the calculation of variance and the standard deviation. Can you remember? Now, that I have not explained today, but I just assume that you have gone through that and you got some idea about it. Now, if I do another one, then I can show you. So you can. There are 4 examples given. Not examples. The 4 supplementary problems given, and you try to work out those things. Then you might get a better understanding. Anyway, now are you comfortable with the calculation of covariance?
Yeah, sir, we can understand the calculation of covariance, but the problem is we can understand in for what purpose that we are using this.
Right. Okay. No, I think all these calculations will have a meaning. The meaning is this. Now, for example, you do some investments in certain assets. When you do investments in assets, you normally don't invest in only one asset. When you invest in 2 assets, you have to just look at the relationship with these 2 assets. So that is very important because your profit or loss depends on that. That is why we calculate all these things. In other words, when you invest in one asset, you can get a return and there will be a risk also. But if you add another one asset to that, the return of we call it a portfolio. the return of that portfolio depends on the returns of both assets and the risk of both assets. Risk is the standard deviation. Now, when you add another asset into your portfolio, that there are two assets. Now you can do this adding up continuously. Now, if you do another asset, what will happen is you will have a portfolio with three assets. Now, when you add in up assets, what will happen is you might end up with a better return and lower risk. When you keep on adding assets, your risk will come down. The total risk of that particular portfolio will come down. So, in order to check a portfolio with a higher return and a lower risk, we do all these calculations. That is the requirement of doing these calculations. For example, if you find there are two assets, these assets will have a minus correlation coefficient. The meaning is, if you add these two assets, the total risk of the two assets would be lower than the normal addition of these two assets. So that is why we do this type of adding up assets, and that we call the diversification. Now, diversification is a concept where we can do in order to bring down the total risk of the portfolio. Now, these calculations will guide you to select assets. That is why we calculate all these things. Now, when you add assets with negative correlations, the total portfolio risk would be lower, and you can have a higher return for that. That is the objective of an investor. Is that clear? Because it's like this. When you do investments, you have to select assets. On what basis you are going to select assets? On the basis of its return and risk. That is why at the beginning, we do this calculations. We do the calculations and find out the returns and risk of those assets. If you do it singly, it is only one asset. But in your portfolio, you should have more than one asset. If you have more than one asset, then you need to be mindful about the correlation between these assets. Why do you mindful? Why you should mindful about it? Because you need to have a portfolio with higher return, lower risk. In order to find out such assets, to create a portfolio with a higher return and lower risk, you need to calculate these things. For example, if you have a asset, a new asset, say you have one asset with you and you are going to get another asset to your portfolio. If that asset has when you add that asset, the correlation is minus, correlation coefficient is minus, that means adding up that asset will bring down the total risk while adding the return. Then you will have a portfolio with higher return with a lower risk. That is why we need to calculate these things. Yes.
So does it mean that if we have a two assets with a positive correlation, then our portfolio risk is higher?
Yeah, it would be a higher one. Yes, higher one. Higher in the sense, now this higher means it is higher than the total. I mean, higher in the sense, say I can just show you the way it can be done, because when you have two assets, And when you calculate the total return of that particular portfolio, what you need to do is you need to multiply the return with the amount. So that is how you calculate the total return of a portfolio. But when you calculate the total risk of a portfolio, the situation is different. Now, for the time being, what I want to tell you is, now since you have asked that question, why you do all these calculations and what is the real significance of this? The significance is that all these calculations really worthwhile for us to select assets for our investments. That is the most important thing. Now, your question is now, if you, I think, if you add an asset with a positive correlation, if you have another asset with a negative correlation, that adding up that negative correlation asset would be more advantageous to you than adding a positive correlated asset.
Yes.
That is the answer for that.
Okay, so thank you.
So all these things, what we do is, why we do these things would be because you have to have some idea or some direction. You can get a direction through these calculations. That is why we all do all these calculations. When you go to the next lesson, you will find it more clearly. Now, this lesson only talks about the risk, return, and covariances and variances only. But all these things will have a very high physical interpretation. Now, it's like this. Say, you are maintaining a portfolio in your organization. Then, in an organization, there's a particular committee to take decisions of investments. Now, when investment committee takes decisions, they take decisions in order to enhance their returns. That is now we can say that is the objective of any type of an investor. Now, if you ask someone, he might say, I am expecting a very high return with the minimum risk. So that is the real objective of an investor. So then since that is the objective, you need to have a quantification of all these risk and returns. Not only the risk and returns, there are correlations also. That is why we need to have these calculations. Now, if I give you a certain real life example, the example can be taken from our stock market. Now, in the stock market, you can see several types of stocks, which might give several types of returns. But though they give several types of returns, they have an inherent risk also. That also can be calculated. And it is in the market. And that type of assets are called risky assets. But you might have some other types of assets also. You have treasury bills, treasury bonds, debentures, and several other types of fixed income assets. Now, in the case of now, since you have asked that question, now you just think about an asset which gives a certain return. For example, if you invest in a treasury bond, that treasury bond will give you a certain coupon payment, half yearly coupon. Then that is your income. That is your return. Now that return, there's no change in that return. But if you look at a bond, the price of a bond can change. Because of that, the return can be changed. But if you get a treasury bill or whatever, basically the risk of a treasury bill is taken as zero. Why? Treasury bills are issued by government. So there's no credit risk at all. It is being given, I mean, the returns are normally given on the particular day. So therefore, there's no risk. So such assets are called risk-free assets. Risk-free asset means the return of such assets doesn't vary. So those are risk-free assets. But when we deal with risky assets like debentures, stocks and all that, we have to be mindful about their variances, their covariances, their returns and all. Anything now, is that okay?
Yes, sir.
And as it is, you just see, I mean, in the stock market, if you go to the Colombo Stock Exchange website, you will find the variations of prices of all the stocks. And by looking at those price charts, you will be in a position to calculate the returns of those stocks. Returns of those stocks on the basis of historical prices. Historical prices. At the same time, you are in a position to calculate the variances also. Variances also. Now, I think in stock market calculations, more or less it is possible to do those calculations. And next lesson we are going to talk about the market risk and the betas and all that. Then we will be in a position to discuss about all these things. Now what I need is to just tell you in this particular lesson, in this lesson, at the end of the lesson, there are supplementary problems. Now in those supplementary problems, I can just give an overview of these things. Now the first problem, it talks about Paracum Corporation. It has the following probability distribution of expected future returns. Now the probability distribution means there are several probabilities. With such probabilities, there will be a forecasted return. Now in this particular problem, 7 probabilities are given, or in other words, 7 alternatives are given for forecasted returns. And in that sum, the question asked to determine the expected return and the standard deviation of returns. Now, when we calculate the standard deviation of returns, what does that mean? How the returns being deviated from the mean? That is what you mean by standard deviation. What are the deviations from the mean? What do you mean by that? So it doesn't stay in a particular level. It varies every time. The level of variance is taken as the risk. If there's no variance, we call it a risk-free asset. There's no variance in their returns, we call it a risk-free asset. I think this concept is very important than doing the calculations. Now, when you say with different probabilities, you can expect different returns. That means there can be a variation. Now, I will show you. I think your question is really valid. That is why I am so descriptive about it. So I will show you something now on the board. Now, when you talk in terms of an asset, the basic values of asset return and the risk of that asset would give you a very good understanding about that asset. So then if you want to explain an asset, you need to get its return, expected return and the risk. So I am talking about asset A. Now, when you talk about that asset, I need to talk about its return and the risk. And risk means the standard deviation. Now, what do you mean by standard deviation? How this return deviates from its mean or the expected return. That is what you mean by standard deviation. Now, it's like this. I can give an example. Say, a particular branch is there. They have calculated the monthly returns of that branch, right? Say, the monthly returns for 12 months, say. I can show you several returns. To be simple, I will put it this way. 1 month it is 10%. The other month it is 12%. Another month it is 15%. Likewise, you can have several returns in 12 months. Now, how are we going to get the mean value of those returns? You get all these returns and add up and divide by the number of months. You get the average return, right? So that average return is the expected. Now, it is not the expected return because we have gone through the historical figures, no. Because those are historical figures, we end up with average. We don't call it expected return because we have not gone through the probabilities. We just got the historical figures and calculated it. Then we call it average, right? I think that is the difference. That is the difference. Now, if you talk in terms of a bank, now banks have several branches. If you take one super great branch and we are trying to get the return of that super great branch, say we calculated it, the profit, a percentage as a percentage or profitability. Now, I think I can just show it to you in this manner. I can take only 6 months figures for the last 6 months, say. I will put it this way. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. 10%, 12%, 15%, 8%, again 10%, again say 5%. Right? Now these are the returns for 6 months. Now what is the difference here? The difference is now we have not gone through any probability thing. We have gone through the historical figures. For the last 6 months, the branch returns. In the first month, there was a return of 10%. In the second month, there was a return of 12%. Third month, 15%. Fourth month, 8%. Fifth month, 10%. And sixth month, 5%. Now, in order to do the expected return, now there's no expected return here because we have already, this is a historical thing. So therefore, here we call it average return. So how are you going to get the average return? You need to add up all these things and divide by 6. And when you add it up, you will get altogether 60. When you add it up, 60 divided by 6 is 10. Then the average profit for this branch would be 10%. So then we call it average or mean value, we call it mean value, right? So we can say average is 60 divided by 6, that is 10. 10% is the average profit. Now you can just look at the return figures. Now you can just look at the return figures and see how those return figures are deviating from the mean value. Just look at the first month's return. That is 10%. What is the average? 10%. Can you see any deviation? It is similar, same. Then there is no deviation. The deviation is 0. So deviation is, what do you mean by deviation? How that return varies from the mean. Mean is 10%, but return is also 10%, so there's no variation. There's no deviation. It is 0. Then the second month, it is 12. Then what is the variation? What is the deviation from the mean? 2%. It is higher than the mean, 2%. Right? Then the next one, it would be 5%. The fourth one, 8 minus 10 would be minus 2. So fifth one, 10 minus 10 is again 0. Last one, 5 minus 10 is minus 5. Now all these will come as deviations. Now, in order to calculate the variance, what you do? We square all these deviations and divide by number of returns. There you get the variance. Now, what does that give? Now I will do it for you. I think this is a simple thing. Now you can see the difference here. Earlier what we did was we went through the probabilities. Here we don't need to have probabilities because we assume all these things will come in the same probability. There's no probability calculation here. We have only numbers. We add all the numbers and divide by the number of points. Then you get the mean value. Then when you want to get the deviations, what you do? You deduct from each and every return the average, and you get the deviations. Now I will show you the deviations here. Deviation is, now average is 10%, 10 minus 10 is 0, 12 minus 10 is, you can say 10 minus 10, 12 minus 10, 2, 15 minus 10, 5, 8 minus 10, minus 2, 10 minus 10 again 0, 5 minus 10, minus 1. Now we need to get the square of the deviations. Otherwise what will happen is, now say, if you try to add it up, what will happen? If you try to add it up, what will happen? You will end up with 0. Try to do it. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 minus 2 is 5. 5 minus 5 is 0. No, you can't do anything now if you have that type of thing. Now we are trying to get the variations or deviations average. If you want to get the deviations average, what we need to do? We need to add up all the deviations. But if you add the deviations, what will happen? Everywhere, if you do this, in every sum, if you do this, you will end up with 0. And you can't do anything. Because of that, we get the square of this deviation. Square, right? Square of the deviation. Now, when you do the square of deviation, you will get zero is 0, 2 is 4, 5 is 25, minus 2 is 4, 0, 0, minus 5 is 25. Now, if you add it up, 25 plus 25 is 50, 4 plus 4 is 8, 58. Get 58. Then, what is the variance? 58 divided by 6 would be the variance for this. Now, what is the physical effect of that? The physical effect is, what is the variation from the mean? 58 divided by 6. That is what you call the variance, right? I will show it to you. Variance is equal to 58 divided by 6. That is 9.6. Now this is variance. Now if you want to get the standard deviation, you have to get the square root of this. Standard deviation is equal to square root of 9.6. Now this value gives an idea about the risk of the return of that branch. Now see, if you have returns of that branch, now here you can see the highest value would be 15%, lowest value is only 5%. So that is a range. But if you take another branch, there can be a higher variation. Then we call it, if the variance is higher for that branch, we call it a more risky branch. So that is how this risk is calculated through variance. But basically the risk is calculated not on the variance, we call it the standard deviation. Standard deviation is the square root of this. Square root of variance. So these are the physical implications. I think you got my point. Now say, if you want to compare 3 branches of your bank, what you can do is, you can get the average return of those branches and the standard deviation of those returns, the branches. By looking at that, you can see what are the branches with higher risk, what are the branches with higher return. So that's the type of evaluation you can do. So in the same manner, you can, if you do any investments, you can do the same type of evaluations. Is that clear? Now you get the point. The variance or the standard deviation. Now variance is the square of the standard deviation. Standard deviation is the square root of variance. Now these figures will give an indication about the risk of the return. Now I have taken an example. In that example, average return is 10%. Standard deviation is square root of 9.6. Square root of 9.6. So if you can calculate square root of 9.6, then I can give you the figure. Now that gives an understanding about the branch. Now how do you get it? You go by the average return of the branch and the standard deviation of those returns. If you take another branch, there also you might get an average return and the standard deviation. Then how do you compare? Now what is your criteria? Your criteria is you need to have a higher return with lowest risk. So that is the optimum. Now if you want to compare branches, so how do you compare? Through the risk and return. So that is why we are very much particular about these calculations. Is that clear? Now I am just asking, now that particular gentleman asked me a question. So then whether these explanations answers your question?
Yes, sir. Very well.
Right. And I think you find that why we square the deviations.
Yeah.
If you do not square the deviation, what will happen? It will add up to 0. Then if you have 0 deviations, we can't do anything. We can't get any figures. Because of that only, we square it. Now when you square, minus things also will become positive. Then you get a figure. Right? So this is the indication, implications of these calculations. Now, I think that's a very, very good question you asked. Now say, for any investment, what is our concern? Our concern is the return and the risk. Return and the risk. In a comparison also, we need to look at that. Then, how do you get the return calculated? Either if the things are given in historical figures, that has to be calculated in this manner, historical figures. But if those are expected type of figures, then you have to go by expected calculations through probabilities. Whatever it is, we need to calculate the average return or the expected return and the standard deviation. That is the risk. If you know all these things, you can compare assets. Not only compare, you can select assets. Now, on the basis, what is your basis of selection? You need to enhance the return, minimize the risk. That is your criteria. Through that criteria, you can do investments. Now, since you need to adapt to that criteria, you need to know the expected returns and the standard deviation of returns of those assets and correlations, covariances and all that. Why we need all these things? In order to select assets in such a manner you can enhance your return and minimize your risk. I think that gives you a better explanation. So that is why we all do all this. I think that question is a very, very valuable, valid question, and it helps everyone to understand these things. Therefore, I invite all of you to raise questions. Then only we can deliver the things in a proper way. Otherwise, it's a very, very drowsy type of a operation. So in order to have a live thing, you need to raise your issues, raise your questions, give your responses. Otherwise, we can't do this. Right? I think you got a good chance, and you try your best to work out these sums. And if you have any question, you can. I will give my telephone numbers and all. Then you can just talk to me if you have any issues. You try your best to work out these sums. There are 4 sums given at the end of the lesson. Right? With that, I end today's session. And next time we will go into the lesson number 2 together with the presentation. And today also we faced with some technical issues. We had some issues with the clearness of the board, some other technical issues, but we will try our best to have a better presentation next time. Thank you very much.